Welcome to the True That Show, a show about lifepreneurship presented with wit, humor, and banter by Deborah Drummond and Caroline Blanchard. A lifepreneur is someone who's living life the way an entrepreneur runs their business. All in. Lifepreneurs are rock stars. Lifepreneurs are people who are brave, who risk, who live full on, who think out of the box, who win this thing called life. Lifepreneurs are around us every day. They are everyday heroes. Join Deborah and Caroline, these two stage-walking women who tell it like it is. You'll learn from the most incredible lifepreneurs who will inspire you to be the best version of you. Now here are your hosts.
Welcome back, everyone. Always a pleasure to have you with us. Hello, Deborah.
Hello, Caroline. How's it out East Coast today?
It's amazing. It's amazing. Always amazing. But what's most amazing is the beautiful days ahead that we're coming. You know, when they say it's that wonderful time of the year, what does that bring for you?
When I hear it's a wonderful time of the year, I think, honestly, Bing Cosby, and I think the holidays, and I think White Christmas, and then I automatically think Nat King Cole because it's my favorite Christmas album ever. So I think of the magic and I think of the snow. But I know there's another element to the holiday season that we don't like to think about till January.
Yeah. It's so fun that you think about snow, given that in Vancouver, there is no snow. And when there's snow, people there, they shut the city down. There's like half an inch of snow and they're like, oh my gosh. So I always laugh at that because in Montreal, we get like 3 feet. But anyway, we have to teach our West Coast friends how to shovel, basically. But yes, there is that subject of money that comes that, you know, for me, when I'm thinking about, you know, that wonderful time of the year, I'm also thinking like that expensive time of the year, because I had someone at some point teaching finances, and she said something that made so much sense. You know, we spend a certain percentage of our income on Christmas gifts when it should be like something like 4 or 5% max. And we go way over that. And technically, if we were all super good, we would save that 5% all year long. But I don't know if you're like me. I know you start thinking about Christmas in May, but I start in December. You know, before December, I don't even want to think Christmas. So in December, I'm like, okay, now I have to purchase all my Christmas gifts. I'm only putting this budget on gifts. But then I start going to stores and I see all of these extra things, you know, that I bust my budget clearly every single Christmas. So I'm lucky that I'm not going into debt. But unfortunately, I know it's a period that, you know, a lot of people overspend because our heart is filled with joy. And like my kid is like, I want an iPhone 13. Oh, well, yeah, the 12. But then you're standing at the store and you're like, yeah, but she's so good these days. Let's just get, you know, you make a bunch of decisions that are not rational. Anyway, that's my case. How are you behaving in that period of the year, Deb?
You know what? It's interesting. I don't think you think much differently than most of us do. And I think when you're like, because our heart's full, there is something really joyous and really wonderful in the idea of gifting, right? You know, like in gifting, and people have that smile on their face and it's something they've always wanted. And it's an expression of how you feel about them. And we love people, so we want to love on them, and we love on them with gifts and what have you. The problem is that voice in our head that we talk about. And honestly, as you know, I'm a small shopper, meaning I purchase from people that I know. Don't throw rocks at me. I've only ever ordered one thing off Amazon. That's not kind of where I go, right? I purchase off independent business owners. They could be part of big companies, but they're independent anyway. So I tend to do my shopping there. But I went out the other day and I was like, there's only one place that has the best lip gloss, in my opinion. So I went and did what I normally do is I like to save time. So I went and bought it for the year because it's lip gloss. It doesn't go bad, right? And I walked by one of my favorite stores, and I went in and I was like, and you know what? I buy things for myself. I take care of things for myself. They're more around self-care, but I was like, ooh, I would like to have that. And I would like to have that. And so whether I've been depriving myself, I don't know. But when I'm buying for others, I'm like, and I notice that I tend to do a little shopping for myself as well. And it feels good. I agree with you, the whole budgeting. And yes, I do start in August. I make my list. I have my list. I buy Christmas cards and Christmas wrap the day after. That's what Boxing Day is for. It's not for buying the next size of TV. It's for buying things on sale and putting them in my closet. And I do buy all year round, but I still myself get caught up in it. I mean, if I'm, I try to avoid the stores and what have you in December, but I get so full of the feeling, I just want to give more. And I get stuck in, I bought that gift for her in August, but I want to give her something else. I want to give us something a little extra. And I think that we all kind of go through that. And I think we all go through that for sure. So
well, buying my first gift in August, and I'll expect to have at least 3 gifts, like every time we go shopping. But for today, we're going to talk with someone who's going to help us and educate us on how should you really manage your finances. He's a person who his busiest, craziest time is December 23rd until taxes season end. And there's a reason for that, because a lot of us wake up December 26th like, holy poop. Can I say this? No. Okay, I'm going to mute myself and I will introduce Noah Rich Lundy. And before I bring him on, I want to say that I asked him, if Rich was part of his last name or if it's just because he was rich. And he's like, no, because I'm getting married soon. He's taking his wife's name. How unique is that? Congratulations for that. It's the first time I hear that. Welcome to the show, Noah. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. I'm glad I get to be here and be a part of your Christmas planning and your discussion on it.
Does Miss Rich had to convince you, or how does that come to be like?
How did the conversation about? No, it was purely me. She asked me if we were going to get married, and I said, yeah, it's definitely a possibility, and we discussed that fairly recently after we got married. When Kia's my old childhood sweetheart, I loved her. She wasn't in love with me. Kind of worked that way. So there's a long story and history behind that. I don't really think this is the right place to talk about all that, because it'll take me half an hour to tell that story. But yeah, it was just a kind of a mutual thing. But I definitely I love her family. I love her. I think that's going to be great being with her. And so Rich Lundy just seemed right.
Awesome. Well, I wish you both all the best.
Thanks.
So Noah, talk to us a little bit about how did you come to be in the world of finances?
Well, so primarily, I started out in IT. So I was a network engineer. I actually have a pretty rich history as a network engineer. I started out as an IT guy when I was basically around 5 years old. I was the only person that could fit between the computer in my grandfather's home office and the wall, because it was that big. And my job was to literally go behind the machine, undo whatever part had failed, and get whatever had made it fail, usually an ant or a moth, from the back of the computer into the cathode ray tube or whatever it was that was in there that needed to be changed. Usually I had special tools for that as well that I took back there. So we literally started out taking out bugs from machines. So that was where I got my beginning in IT. I loved the machine from that point forward. I just invested myself heavily into it. And then I started a few businesses, mainly in IT or in that field. Became very well known as a network engineer and a network developer for a lot of big businesses. Worked in a bunch of Fortune 100 companies. Broker dealers and hedge funds were primary goal target markets for what I was doing. They were one of the few companies that had those kinds of computer systems, needed those kind of networks together. So I worked for a bunch of them. And had a lot of really big contracts. And then I got really tired of chasing people for the money they owed me. And I kind of just said, okay, I sold my last business. I'm done. I just want to retire and get done with this business. And when I did that, I was like, okay, let me try moving from there to something completely different. And I went into, my friend had been begging me to join his headhunting firm, recruiting company, for a better term of it. And I joined his company. And then somebody asked me in the middle of nowhere, hey, if I had an opportunity, would you be interested? And I said, yeah, sure. And I went to a meeting, and I'd actually been to that same meeting in 1999, and I hadn't joined Primerica back then. And they had switched me over to, because my grandfather said, you're not getting involved in any company that sells insurance. That's how come I didn't join in 99. This was 2015. And I saw it as a really great value add to the recruiting business. So I was like, oh, hey, if I get somebody a job where they get an extra 30,000 a year, I can show them what to do with it and how to make in plans. And I started learning all these lessons that I had never gotten while working for the broker dealers, the hedge funds, or even having my own business. Like, I knew a lot of stuff about running a business, having a business, but personal finance wasn't really good, where I had a good thing. And in fact, I'd had a lot of really bad upsets in personal finance. I wasn't doing, despite the amount of money I made, sometimes I really wasn't very good at budgeting. And Christmas came around. For me, it's Hanukkah. I wouldn't buy one present for each kid for each day. I'd buy 5 presents for each kid for each day. I did the same thing. But I started really learning a lot of lessons here. And then somebody said to me, a guy named Bill Orender was on a call, and he said, you can help 1 million people. And I'm like, help 1 million people? I can't help 100 people. Like, I have a hard time getting through my finance. How am I going to help 100 people? You're going to help 1 million people. You're going to help 100 people who are going to help another 100 people who are going to help another 100 people. And he gave me the network marketing arm of what Primerica can do. And I was like, wow, that sounds fantastic. But that's still like 1 million people is like way too many people to manage. You can't do that. And I heard a guy named Bill Whittle speak, and I will forever praise Bill Whittle. Bill Whittle showed me the system that makes it work. And I was like, that's the best thing I've ever thought of. And I was super in. And that was that I stopped doing recruiting. I stopped doing anything else and came to Primerica full time. So.
Wow. So I think that's common, that a lot of times it comes to us, there's something that we see about a product or a service or a change in career or a direction that we need to go to, particularly if it's about helping others. And so learning what we need to learn. You obviously come from a background of IT. You've obviously hung out in the circles of business and entrepreneurs and helping raise capital and all of that. And interesting, it's kind of like, it's like the baker that starts a bakery that's fantastic at baking, but doesn't know how to run the infrastructure of running a business, and unfortunately doesn't have success. And that, I think, is a really common theme. One of the things that I love about hanging out with you, and I've had an opportunity to chat and talk more about you, is how you are so passionate about, it's kind of hard to ask you, so Noah, what do you want to talk about today? You're like, oh, because I talk to high school kids and I want to teach them about money. And, there's our demographic, I'll just say Caroline's age, as she was talking about earlier, because I get to throw that bucket at her because normally it's my age, and the breaking the cultural barriers of talking about money, coming at that end of the stage of your life where you're looking at your next 30, what does that look like, and wills and life insurance. There's so many things that you do. But I think at the heart of it is one of the things that really attracted me, and I'll just talk about that, is I was raised in a generation where you didn't ask people about their money. You didn't ask how much money they made. It was like that kind of Jones, they look like they've got it together. They look like they've got it together. And after the expense of living a life or raising kids, or maybe not being raised with a heightened sense of being able to multiply and duplicate money. Like, I was raised, money doesn't grow on trees, a penny earned is a penny saved, and all of that kind of more lack of prosperity. But I was raised by a single mom with 2 kids with a woman who eventually went into finance and dragged me in my 20s to go get my first mutual fund. I didn't even know what it was. So I think sometimes we always think that other people are doing better than us. And we're kind of embarrassed when we get to the 40s, the 45s, the 50s, the 55s, and we're like, I don't have anything. And then you get like, you don't want to talk about it. It's kind of like you just don't want to talk about it and you put it over here. And that's dangerous, right?
Yeah, that's hugely dangerous. And the reason it's dangerous is not that, because the big thing you see a lot is for lack of a better term, you're comparing yourself to the Joneses. What you don't know is that the Joneses have 100, like so many families I go into and talk to are, they're $50,000-$60,000 in debt. They have their BMW. Yeah, they have a brand new BMW. They have a mortgage. The mortgage is $250,000. They're 85 to 90% of the families we talk to are 2 paychecks away from broke, from homeless. Like literally, like, you're 2 paychecks away from being forever behind on your mortgage and trying to keep up and trying to make, like, you miss those. And we just had this pandemic, and we haven't even seen the repercussions of that yet, because people are still getting float money. They're still trying to figure out how to make things work. But we're seeing a big mass exodus from day-to-day work to what we do, like basically gig work. You work at home, you network marketing, that kind of thing. But that exodus that's going to end too, because people are being forced to return back to work. So the idea, like, one of the things he said is like, when you go into your job, you're not supposed to talk about your money, right? You're not supposed to, and that doesn't come from your mom or your dad, that you're talking about money. That comes from your boss, because he doesn't want you discussing that you're getting paid 40 cents on the dollar for every dollar that I'm making, and that's real. That's a real thing. Is your employers are the biggest purveyors of don't discuss your wages, but that's illegal. It's actually illegal to tell people they can't talk about their wages. So it's amazing that there's this personal dichotomy about, oh, I can't talk about what I'm doing or where to go. We have a video that we talk about, and in the video, the very first thing is like, wouldn't you like to be able to go to that rich neighbor's door and knock on their door and say, what do you do for a living that pays you the kind of money that you can afford this house, this these 14 cars in your driveway and stuff like that? And I had the opportunity, because I worked with a bunch of broker dealers and hedge fund guys, to be friends with them and find out what they did. A bunch of guys who owned a bunch of construction companies, all those guys that got their start doing other things to make their money and managing their money correctly, because they had the right information to do that. And a lot of families just don't know who to ask or where to go. So being able to have those conversations is the biggest key of like, oh, well, I feel comfortable being able to talk to this person because I just had a client recently that was, she was talking about a problem she was having with her mortgage, right? And she was having a really hard time with it. And I was like, well, why don't you just give me a call and we'll discuss it. And she literally, at one point, we were in near where she works, and she literally pulled my fiance aside and said, I feel so funny talking about this to somebody, a stranger. And Kia is fantastic. She just went, the worst that's going to happen is you're going to tell him something and then you never call him again. And that's really what it is like, at least I'm a stranger in that sense of being able to talk to somebody about something. And I'm fairly self-confident about the advice I give at this point. I've seen it work enough times that I could be like, oh yes, I know what I'm talking about. So I don't feel too nervous about giving advice anymore. When I first started though, I was terrified. There are times that I still get nervous.
Of course, and that's human nature. It's human nature to not always be 100% sure, like, because you're walking in different situations with different personalities, probably getting different reactions.
Yeah.
But what I really identify to what you're saying is the lady who told you, like, oh, that's so fun to talk about it, because it's really not something we talk about. And I have this neighbor that you said, we have the exact same house. I know that the wife was a lunch teacher working 2 hours a day. I don't know what the husband does, but they redid their whole house. So they have version 2.0. I have version 1. And every single time they add to their house, I'm like, I wonder how much that cost them. And I wonder, like, where are they taking their money? They're now retired and all of this. So then you start playing a bunch of scenarios in your head. Oh, they probably get this, that. So wouldn't it be nice for me to just even like go and say like, hey, how much replacing all your windows was and blah, blah. But we are in a culture where you don't ask these kind of questions. And also what you just said, it doesn't mean necessarily that they have the funds, but people control their debts and their actives differently. You know, some people are not scared to go 100,000 in debts. And I know that for my husband, if we're $1 in debt, it's like, oh my gosh, we're poor. And I'm like, no, because we have the money to pay it at the end of the month. And, you know, because we schedule, but for him in his minding, like having a debt is like a big no, and you can't have that. So it's all different ways that I guess we're seeing money. But what I'm getting to is that, like, if I look at myself at 47, and yes, Deb, I can mention my age. I was talking about my situation because pre-interview we were talking about retiring, so I'm still pre-retiring me. So no, you know, at 47, you're in a state where, like, my older kids, one is gone, one is on the verge of leaving the house, but now we are on a recoup mode, because we've raised them for like 22 years and 3 kids, you know, they had sports and this and that and that and that. We were not in a phase of saving. You know, we were in a phase of making it, yes, to the next paycheck, yes, to the next paycheck. So now at 47, I know that people look at me and must think like, oh my gosh, you know, she must be rich. But I'm still not that high in my savings. And it's kind of like awkward for me to go see a finance person because I feel like I'm not there yet. And I think I'm not the exception, because we all feel like, well, I'm not there yet because I don't have like 100K to invest. So in the meantime, I'll keep banking money. What do you say to all of that?
Yeah. And one of the things that we talked, one of the great reasons, one of the reasons I got involved in this business particularly was, they said, you know, we start savings accounts for people to start accumulating money for as little as $25 a month. So I used to go into high schools and talk to high schools, to the graduating class, about how they could be richer than their parents. You know, I talk about, when I go to the high school, I talk about, what's your zero? What's your new zero? You're graduating into the world. You have to have a $0 amount, and that better be better. It better be more than $5,000. You know, like your zero is to be like, I have $5,000 in the bank. If I go below that, I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting broke. I have to worry. I have to go find something else to do. I got to get in a side hustle. I got to get something on the side, because that's your, if your zero isn't 2 to 3 months of your income, you're not safe. Like, you really aren't. And that's really what we talk, you know, and it really, some advisors say 6 months, some say 9 months, some say a year, but you really need some form of liquid number that isn't credit card debt, which is going to put you at a totally different kind of zero. You know, but a lot of people, I know people that live on some, they have HELOCs, which have other names in other areas, but it's home equity line of credit, and they live on their home equity line of credit. They have their home equity line of credit is, you know, 50, and they're paying 4% interest a year. And if I can show you how bad it is for you to live on 2%, how bad inflation is for you. If you just keep your money in the bank, you're not even keeping up with inflation, and you're losing money every year. So people who think they're saving their money and being safe are actually losing money every year, because they're not doing any kind of investment to get that return that puts them over inflation. You need at least 3% over inflation to actually be making money. Inflation is 3%. So you want a 6% return on your money. And if you're not getting that, you're losing money. You know, no, there's no other two ways about it. And, you know, the bank is awesome. They give you 0.25%. You know, so we talk about the rule of 72. Take 72, divide that by the interest rate you're getting. So, you know, you put $10,000 in the bank at 0.25%, it's 144 years for your money to double. You know, how many of those doubling periods you got in your life? Not many. Maybe one. If you're lucky, you got one. I'm going to have 5, but that's just because I'm weird. You know, so it's that real kind of like, what are you doing with your money? How do you have it? And if you can't have that conversation, a lot of people are afraid to have that conversation, or they're worried about that conversation. But I said it earlier when we were talking, is like, one of the things that I talk about is like, more people spend more time choosing a movie on Netflix than they do the last 30 years of their life. What's your plan? What's the thing? And like I said, what got me involved in this company was that we offer an entrance plan. So you don't have to have you know, and I'm not, you know, most of the big financial firms that you want to walk into, they don't want your business if you don't have 150,000, 200,000. Even if you have 100,000, you know, that's not who they want. They want the guy with 200, 300,000. Now, I'm not going to turn somebody down because they have 200 or 300,000, but I'm much more interested in helping a family become properly protected, debt-free, and financially independent, because I'm going to make millionaires. I want to make millionaires. My big goal in life is to make as many millionaires as I possibly can. So if I can do that for people starting at $25 a month and show them how to get there, show their kids how to get there, that's a better education for everybody all around. And that's really what I strive for the most, is to get that out there. So
the other like big misconception, I think, for years that I didn't invest or didn't think about savings, it's that I'm thinking I'm struggling right now, and with the same salary, like someone is expecting me to do some savings. So it doesn't even equate in your brain. So you don't even want to call the person and say help.
Yeah. There's yeah, for sure. I'm sure there's a level of fear of like admitting that you don't know admitting that you don't know how to do something, or that you didn't get those lessons. And I talk a bit, I talk about it. I talk a bit when I go to, when I talk to those high school classes, when I talk to people, almost every interview I give, I say this thing. So if anybody sits there in an interview, they'll recognize this from me. It's, what's the one thing that you get, that you need to think about every day, that you work with every day, that you're always looking for more of every day, and you always want to know more about every day, but you don't get very much education, or if any education, about it in school. And invariably I'll wait for somebody in the audience to shout money, or I'll wait for my person to say money, because that's really what you don't get a great education on in school. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the education system, although that's a whole nother discussion. So, but in general, that one thing is the most important thing in your day-to-day life. Like, money doesn't make you happy. Like, it doesn't give you love. It doesn't give you any of that things, but it sure solves a heck of a lot of problems on the way. Like if you're in our company and you're a financial guide, somebody says to you, money doesn't make you happy. I'm like, yeah, but I can go buy a jet ski and that'll give me 20 minutes. Right. So that's awesome. It's more about the way you think about money and what it does for you, rather than thinking about what you can and can't accomplish at the point in your life. If you want to be rich, you got to be saving if you want to be rich, you got to be saving 20% of your salary. If you want to retire rich, if you want to retire at the means that you've got, start saving 5% of your salary. I know it's not much, but it's better than not putting away anything, because that rule of 72, the money doubling, it's either working for you or against you all the time. And so not having those discussions is just making it work against you. Like I said, the rate of inflation, something that cost $1 in 1951 would cost $18,000 today, just from inflation. That's it. There's something called an Adipex index, and it's actually shows how much inflation has made things go up. So like, back in the day, if the thing cost $1, now it'd cost about 18 grand. And that's basically since the inception of money and inflation, but nonetheless, that's still what's going on every day. And then there's things that don't even deal with inflation, like the cost of education has gone up 249% over that period of time, right? Like over the past 5 years, the cost of it's past 15 years, the cost of education has gone up over 249%. Like, that's not inflation. That's just insanity. So that's college education, mind you, not just high school education. And yeah, I'm sure there's reasons and justifications. They got to pay for all the new stuff. They got to pay for higher wages. They got to do all these other things that are going on in their schools. But that's what it costs now, right? So, and hyper marketing indexes and everything like that. So that's a little more complicated. So I'll shut up about that.
Well, I think thank you for that, and I love when statistics come out like that. When you share things like that, because it kind of does wake us up to it. And our listeners and our viewers are going to probably do one or two things. One is they're going to get excited because they're starting to get educated. The other is that their brain's going to flood out because it's such a charged topic. Even in relationships, you've got two people. Maybe you've got an adult child in the house that's also giving their opinions. You've got one person that came from maybe a house where things were abundant.
Yeah.
And people didn't worry about money because it was always there. It was maybe generational money. Then you've got somebody whose parents scrimped and scaved. And like Caroline was sharing earlier, I'm just using an example, might be very opposite to that person, where you know, debt is, I remember feeling, my mother was a credit manager for Carter GM. Debt was a bad word. And then bad word. And then I remember hanging out with a friend of mine who was the first millionaire under 30 in Canada. And I was trying to get my business together. And he's like, you need to go borrow this money. And I'm like, I can't borrow money. And he's like, if you can't borrow money, don't ever expect to be wealthy, ever. You need to get rich on other people's money. And my head was going to explode because I was raised with never be in debt. Then I had this guy telling me if I wasn't willing to go and ask for money, my business was going to collapse. And I think what happens is our poor brains get loaded because there's so many different opinions. We have our own trauma around money. Lots of us have had it, lost it, been divorced, been this. We know what it's like to have and not have. And so feeling safe with somebody that can take you through that journey and say, you know what, 5% is okay, or 20% is better. I think that's why someone like yourself is so needed, because there's this non-judgmental part. And then also, I can't imagine what it's like to work with couples. And that must be very interesting, where one person's one way and the other person's the other. How do you, what does that look like? Because there's people out there that are completely complicated. Don't buy RRSPs. RRSPs are the best thing. Get a TFSA, put it in. There's a lot of information out there. So how does one work with that situation,
Well, so there's a few parts to that I would take apart pretty quickly. The first thing is that I get excited about this. This is my jam. I love talking about this. I love being, you can't get me more excited than having a conversation about, and I go to people's houses and, we just did Thanksgiving dinner. And of course, I'm just talking about finance all day. And so half the people are like not listening to me and, totally ignoring me. And the other half are like, oh yeah. So but to me, it's like taking a drink from I akin this business to taking a drink from a fire hose. Like I have the amount of information I want to give you is so much and so varied and so, but at the same time, it's a personal fire hose. Like, it's just for you. Your situation is not your husband's. Your situation is not. I work with you together so that you guys have a common plan, but you might have different goals. You might have different objectives, and that means that you have to have those goals listed as the part of the plan. So sometimes I'll separate that into two separate people or two separate, entity ways of doing things. But most of the time, because you guys are a couple, because they're working together, there's that win-win situation between you. So I talk about Stephen Covey all the time, and I'll relate a lot of the stuff to him. But like I've said to people, look, there are two things that break up marriages primarily: money and sex. And sex is 90% of the sex problems are money. So the real problem in most relationships is the way you talk about and the way you deal with money. In most situations, it's mostly about, I don't feel comfortable talking to my wife about this. I don't feel comfortable talking to my husband about that. I don't want to talk about the money thing. And the money thing, and those little increment things that you can't talk about are what the big problems in the relationship come. You fight over, oh, we can't afford, you spent $35,000 on Christmas. Are you crazy? Well, no, I make $185,000 a year. I don't care if I spend $35,000 on Christmas, whatever, so it really is those conversations that you can't have because you're not really honest about your money and stuff. So, and I've had sit downs with clients and had calls from the spouse, whichever one it was, that was like, I actually have 4 credit cards for $35,000 and I want to be able to pay those off. Could you tell me how to do that without telling my husband? And I'm like, yes, but I think you should probably sit him down and let him know that you've done it. No, we'll get divorced. I'm like, okay, I'll see what I can do. So I've had those conversations and they're scary. I mean, and I told you, I get nervous sometimes. It does happen to you. And all the time, the thing that makes me nervous about my business and the thing that is that I take on like a fiduciary. I'm not saying that I'm a fiduciary and I'm going to do that. In general, people in our company are, but I do take on that responsibility. I do take on that responsibility of being a fiduciary for somebody, which means I'm responsible for what happens with your money. I'm responsible if I give you bad advice. I'm responsible for what happens to you as a person if I'm helping you with those products. Whether I actually am responsible, my feeling is that I am. So for me, I take that on. I worry about that. And so when I have those meetings, I'm like, oh my goodness, I want to make sure I do a good job. I want, so I'm always focused on that. And that conversation is about making sure that someone gets to where they want to go, no matter what it is. It's customized for individual people to make sure that that's your plan is in effect. And if you're a couple, you want that to be together. Like almost always it's about where can we go? What can we do? How are we going to celebrate with the kids? Can we go on vacation? Those are, so that we talk about in our company, financial independence. And what we help you get is a financial independence number. So that's, most people think of retirement as, okay, how much money do I need in the bank to never work again, to never have to worry about how much I'm getting again. And that number is financial independence. Most people think of retirement as, I'm going to be 65 and I'm going to get a pension from the government, and I'm going to have savings and I'm going to live. Well, if you only have $35,000 in the bank, that isn't going to make you live very long at the lifestyle you're used to. You're not going to have it. It's not going to give you that return that's going to make you grow. So we help people figure out what their financial independence number actually is, because retirement is a number. It's how much money are you getting every month, not an age. And so we try to switch that conversation. And again, taking a drink from a fire hose, but kind of like that. And that conversation happens for both of you at different times. So if one of you can retire, that doesn't mean both of you can retire, right? Because you might need that second income for a little while longer. You might need to discuss that. And you might need to say, hey, well, what's the other person going to be doing while I'm doing this? Well, okay, can we look at a business? Can we look at something else? Do they want to do something else? Do they want to do they want to do trips without you? Like, and those are all independent. Yeah. So, yeah, it happens. It does happen there, Caroline.
Yeah.
But so like, Kia and I like to do everything together. Like she's actually a part of the business now. So she helps me run the business. She helps me do a lot of stuff in the background. When I'm on meetings, she's in the background taking notes for me. So she helps me run the business. And she's also, she's now a rep for the company, and she's, getting life license and doing all that stuff. So she can do a bunch of stuff like that as well. But she loves what we do as well. And I think that comes from being with me and seeing that, I live an abundant lifestyle. I think in a specific way about having basically an unlimited amount of money, because I've never worried about where I'm getting my money from. I know money does grow on trees. It doesn't feel like it to a lot of people, but it's literally everywhere. It flies through the air from electronic transactions every minute of every second. You just got to figure out a way to make sure that you're getting your piece of it. And that just requires work. So this is the same thing where I'm trying to get you to work. I want you to work on yourself. I want you to work on your budget. I want you to work on these things. And I help you every step of the way to make sure those things are happening for you long term. So in that separation place where you're looking at two separate people, you both need to be doing separate work. You both need to be figuring out the thing, and then just kind of having those conversations with the couple, with an individual or whatever it is, or even the whole family, about what are you working on? How are you going to get this through this part? What are your common goals as a family? What are your common goals? What do you want your kids to be able to do? Do you want them to be able to go to college? Do you want them not to go to college? How do you want to train them in money? What kind of lessons can we help them learn while we're starting with you? Start giving them an allowance, but put that allowance in a retirement plan or in their education plan rather than a thing. And they can see that putting away money in their education plan actually builds them extra money later, or showing them how to save for that bicycle. I talk about allowances for little kids. It shouldn't be, here's $5, go spend it on what you want. It should be, here's $4, I'm putting $1 towards your bicycle fund. And then Christmas takes care of itself, because then they get the bicycle they wanted because they had enough in their bicycle fund. So like that kind of thing. So yeah.
I love the way, it sounds to me, and I know from chatting with you many times, it's how you get people to think about money, which is really the paradigm shift.
Yeah.
A prime example, $4, go to the store, $1 is going to go into that glass jar or whatever it is, and Christmas takes care of itself. And I think it's so important to have you on the show at this time of year, because this is the time of year that we're doing that self-evaluation. And this is also the time of year that we can get really down on ourselves and feel like we didn't do what we should have done. And honestly, it's expecting someone who's never taken sewing lessons to make their own New Year's Eve dress. It's not going to look that great because you didn't have,
It's worse than that. It's like taking somebody who doesn't know what sewing is. Like it really is. It's like, okay, you don't know what a sewing machine is. You don't know what a stitch is. You don't know what thread is. Here, figure out how to make this dress. Like it really is. It's because yeah, you get some education. You'll get some education. Some, like, I've got 2 kids in my business. And I'll admit this right now on air. I love people with no debt. I love having clients with no debt. Oh my God. It's the one thing that I see all the time that works so much against people is people with debt and getting people out of. But one of the things, and we don't get paid to get people out of debt. I don't get paid anything extra for putting you in what we call, debt stacking, teaching about how debt works, and teaching you how to get out of debt. But we show people how to get out of debt 30, 40 years early, especially credit card debt. We show that credit card debt, as we can get rid of that way faster than you think you can. But we have methods that we use to do that, and a tried true system. But I want to get everybody out of debt. Debt freedom is a huge, huge changer. And one of the big reasons that I came to Canada was because the debt ratio to Canada, the reason I decided to get licensed in Canada and help people here was because the debt ratio in Canada is usually it's 3 times higher here. There's 3 times more people with debt, like large credit card debt, than there is per capita and than anywhere else in the world. I think it's some number like that. I might be slightly wrong about that number, but that's what I heard. And that was like, oh my God, I gotta go get licensed in Canada, because even if half of Kia's family is suffering from that, I worry about it. So I'm talking to these 2 kids that are on my team now. They're starting in the business, and they're every single person they've introduced. They're young kids with good educations about finance, not great, but good, like basics. None of their friends have debt. None of the people that I had been introduced through them have debt. And I'm just like, oh, you guys are so great. I love talking. I love all the clients you refer to me, because I don't have to worry about that. That debt solution problem is years of working it down. Like I can't really give you a fantastic, great, you're not going to grow a lot of money if you've got a lot of debt. You're not going to build a giant nest egg with that debt load standing over you. So my first and primary goal is get rid of that debt load to help you get into that. And a lot of people don't know where they get that debt from. And it does come from Christmas. It does come from Hanukkah. It does come from gifting. It does come from, living slightly beyond your means. And slightly beyond your means is, Starbucks 7 days a week instead of 5. Most people lose $200 to $500 a month in income on nothing. They don't know where it goes. They're not aware of where they spend that extra $200 to $500 a month. It's just gone. And they don't understand that $200 to $500 a month, $500 a month over, 25 years at 9% interest is about $1 million.
Wow.
Right?
It's funny you say that, because I'm good at doing a budget. And funny enough, I have about 500 a month that I write miscellaneous, because I know that that's the 500. I have no clue where it's going to go. It's all
right. And that's the norm. And that's what people don't understand. That's normal. Like that's really normal that happens to a lot of people. It's not unusual. And a lot of people feel like, if I have a budget, I know exactly where all my money goes. No, and the only way you know exactly where your money goes is if you write down in a little notepad every time you spend $1. And yeah, I did that because I was raised by, a Jewish old grandfather who said, you can't spend your money without writing down every single dollar. Right. And I got out of that habit. And what actually got me out of that habit was debit cards. So I take my money I use a debit card at the bank. And one of the great things about debit cards that most people don't understand is that by paying with a debit card, you actually lose the transactional loss of spending money. When you spend money to get something, you're trading something that you can't get back to get that stuff, even shopping. If you use your credit card or a debit card to do that, you're giving that to them. It's costing you nothing, and you're taking it back. So you lost nothing in the transaction. You just got a bunch of stuff. And people don't understand they spend 20 to 40% more a year than they normally would just with that. Once you start using cash only to do your transactions and your sales, you'll start finding, I guess I don't really, I've got $200 a month. If you start your month with the amount of money you need to spend, and you start spending it that way, you're going to find yourself saving lots of money at the end of the month. You're going to have money because you're not going to buy that extra chocolate bar. You're not going to buy that extra coffee. You're like, yeah, I've only got $200. I don't want that coffee today. I've only got $150 left. Oh, I've only got $60 left for my 200 that I started the month with, and it's Wednesday.
Yeah.
It's the third day of the month.
There, it's like, I remember when my son turned an adult, he had a part-time job, and he's like, Mom, I want a credit card. I'm like, okay, apply, and maybe you're going to get one for $300 or $500. And in my mind, I was like, it's good. You're going to build your credit. They gave him like 2,000 right away. I was like, what is that? So
I only got 2. I was expecting 5.
No, I think I would have cut the card at that point.
Good.
But I think there's a lot of education to be done at a younger level. But, to stay on what we were saying today, I also think we're not too old to get educated on, what to do and how to do it. And the proof is now. It's like we've done a full podcast and we could still talk about it for another 3 hours. So I think it's really important to educate yourself and to seek the opinion of professionals who can actually really tailor, the education to your needs. Because, like for me, if someone talks about, I don't know, commercial buildings, I'm like, okay, great. It's great knowledge to have, but it doesn't apply to me. Right. But when we consult someone like you, we can really get like what's pertaining to me. How can I change my situation? And I think that the big taboo on that is that we need to move the fear away. And yes, talk about your finances, because there are people that are really great at it and that know more than you, and they're there to actually help you, not hinder you. So for me, thank you, Noah, because I actually learned quite a bit today. And I also learned once more that I don't know that much and that I have so much more to learn. That's what happens when you learn every day. You're like, wow, I really didn't know much. So to close the show, I will leave the last word to Deborah, but Noah, I will give you the last word before we give her the very last word of the show.
Okay, now or?
Yes.
Okay, so the thing I would say, the thing that applies to almost everybody, and this is pretty universal, the best time to plant a money tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now. Don't wait to talk to somebody like me. Don't wait to talk to somebody that can give you some advice. There's, consultations and questions are complimentary. There's no worry about whether you're going to talk to somebody and get something for yourself, but just start talking to people that might be able to help you. Seek out those financial professionals, and please reach out if you think it might be me.
Where can people reach you at, Noah?
I'm Noah Rich Lundy, and you can just send an email to Noah Rich Lundy, or you can call. It's an American. My Canadian phone number is 250-800-9250, and my American phone number is 631-923-8750. The American phone number is actually my cell phone, so if you text me at the 631 number. But make sure you have an unlimited plan. Don't spend money on doing that.
I love it. I love these little money tips. And honestly, I'm going to kind of go back again. I want to make sure that it's at gmail.com. Is that your email?
No, it's actually noah@richlundy.com.
Oh, noah@richlundy.com. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. And we're going to have your bio and everybody can contact you there as well.
Yeah.
Overall, if you had, I know we're going into the holiday season, we're coming to the end of the year. We don't want to leave people feeling like, oh my gosh, I've been doing everything wrong. Obviously taking action now is better than waiting and not feeling good, which is a lot of people what we do with, we want to lose 10 pounds, but we put it off to January because Christmas is coming. And sometimes we feel like we're too far in the game. If you were to give people just 1 or 2 money tips, just money tips in general, other than coming to you sooner than later, is there anything that you can say that would just kind of help us get through the season until we can pick up the phone and call you?
On the average, stop paying multiple. Start doing debt stacking now. You have multiple credit cards. You have multiple debt structures. Don't pay off extra. Don't pay more to a bunch of different ones, pay it all to one, get rid of that specific debt in that category, then keep the amount of money you pay every month the same and drop it to the next one. That's what we teach to teach debt resolution. It's debt stacking. It's also called snowballing. Gordon Ramsay teaches it. We teach it. There's a big bunch of, good people to do it. The next thing is change if you haven't already done this, one of my biggest pieces of advice I talk to people is change your loan payment structure to if you get paid weekly or biweekly, change it to weekly or biweekly, so that money comes out every month, and you'll end up with 2 extra payments or 3 extra payments a year that'll pay down that debt that much faster. So those 2 different structures are really good ways to start getting out of debt right away, and they really make a big difference to people's structures. Debt, a lot of people freak out when they get debt. Don't worry so much about that you've got debt. Worry more about trying to build a plan to figure out how to get away from it, and get away from credit cards as fast as you can. The way that you pay interest on credit cards is not like you pay credit for anything else, and not like how the money doubles against you every month. The awesome. Compounding effect isn't annual, it's monthly. So you pay interest on the higher rate. Your credit card will go over what it was. And please, for love of everything, stay away from payday loans and payday advances. Please just don't do that. Whatever you do in your life, don't go borrow money against your paycheck for 25 to 55% interest or more. That's worse than loan sharks.
All right. Well, there are some good words to live by, and I know that people are going to be calling you. And I think because our audience, and I know I'm talking to you, audience, a lot of you are entrepreneurs, and I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years. And one of the things that was a lesson that I learned, and I'm so glad having conversations with Noah, is that, a lot of times we stack up credit cards, or we stack up because we're investing in ourselves, we're investing in our business, and our business is our future plan. So we see it as our future plan. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, because I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years, and, I've built business on credit card as well, and had to have that conversation. And just, especially as an entrepreneur, we have this idea that we're always going to be able to build and make more. And I think talking to someone like Noah actually can make that correct, because we do use credit cards a lot in businesses, because you're buying this and you're buying this and you're buying this, and then making sure that you're paying it off and what have you. But it's part of the build. So having advice from someone like Noah that can walk you through, because that's the one thing I love about you the most, is that you understand entrepreneurs. You've been one, you've had businesses, that mindset, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So anyways, I thought you were going to say something there, but I'm going to end off with, I feel very educated. Don't be afraid to go and say where you're at. There's a lot of kid raising that probably was great. Maybe you used your visa to get a private school for your kid, and it was the best thing you ever did, or the bike that they needed, or the braces that they needed. And I think everybody's done the best that they can. And those things have been there and have probably brought as much benefit. But now, as you're taking that leap forward to the next 30 years, and what it is that you should do now to plan for your future, no matter where you are in that process. And thank goodness that the conversation of money is not taboo anymore, because my son just asked me a question about money that he learned when I was reading Think and Grow Rich with my daughter. And I was like, wow, it really stuck in. This kid's, 17 years old. And so I think it's our job as well to open the door and have conversations about money and not make them taboo, and to be able to share about things like that. And that's why I'm so grateful you're on the show. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And we appreciate you so much for being listeners. And please forward and share this podcast and video that you're watching with anybody that you think needs to hear something that we've said or that Noah said today. And if you think that you would like to come onto the show, we'd love to have you. If you have something that our listeners and viewers need to hear, then please reach out to us at debandcaroline@gmail.com. If you'd like to be an author in one of our books, please contact us. And keeping yourself on target is something that people do with our Entrepreneur Planner and Tracker as well. So anything that you want from us, just go to that email, and anything that you want from Noah, you're going to have his information with this podcast. So please reach out, and thank you once again. And thanks, Caroline, and thanks, Noah, for a very pre-Christmas education on money.